being a black male, right there, the grid is not made for you. Forget that I'm European or whatever. When somebody doesn't pick me up, doesn't give me a job, doesn't give me this, Europe doesn't exist. You're a black male, which is the most scrutinized animal on earth. That also, by the way, makes your food story very exciting and yummy. So if you as a black male can create, as a cook, can create a narrative that you really hone in on, you can be so special. Now you have to fight much, much harder, but that's what we are born to do. Do I wish it was different? Yeah, I can wish for that. Ain't gonna happen. How do I change it? By doing. Tonight's dish is a light appetizer. We're doing a char tartare, pickling taro root. And char is a fish that I grew up with, and pickling is something that I always grew up with in Sweden. Then next to that, it's going to be a stew that is mixed with pork and dorawat, this chicken stew from Ethiopia, and fresh cottage cheese that I just made. So something very, very light next to something heavier, and then builds up to the crescendo, which is really fried chicken oysters, the backside of the chicken. That sort of gives you that fried chicken bite, but it's the backside. So much of my food comes from sort of poor man's cooking that is super delicious, but it needs to be framed up and held up just as much as truffles and foie gras. Good? Right?
Woo! What is this?
Ethiopia, baby, Ethiopia. Restaurants is one of those fields that I don't have to outsource a lot of my work. The person, the cook, the chef, the pastry chef, the servers, the maître d', they actually live in my community. So we create a village. And that's how a lot of great communities start, by small business owners saying, you know what, we can do this together.
I guess what was initially perceived as a controversial move, like how dare you set up shop next to us, what he did was essentially just bring new life to the block.
You know, he, more than just about as anybody, is responsible for this second rebirth of Uptown in Harlem, where you have all these different diversity of people coming together because of food.
The dish that I picked for tonight is called lettuce cups, and it's sort of a reminder of maybe lettuce cups that you can get like at P.F. Chang's or something like that, where you get a piece of an iceberg lettuce cup, but we wanted to make it a baller version of that. Instead of taking iceberg lettuce, we're stacking little gem lettuce, which is like sweet and crisp, mint, Thai basil, and shiso, and then we make a flank steak tartare with fried onions and a fish sauce vinaigrette. And then we make a product that we call salmon roe misozuke, and misozuke means that something that's pickled in miso. So we take salmon roe and pickle it in miso and mirin and sake. So all that's mixed together and then placed in this tiny little cup.
I feel like there's these standards of like Chinese or Chinese American dishes that you think about that we always want to like reinvent. So that was our version of like reinventing it.
I get inspiration from a lot of different cuisines that's not just Asian. We get inspiration from lots of different places, like American Southern regional cuisine or New York Jewish food, anything.
For 3 11-year-olds, one drink usually does it. But because the food is so delicious and nutritious, I'm on my third and I still don't even feel buzzed. As we like to say in the Sprouse house, skunjipi.
I'm making a ribeye steak Brava style. We have these giant ribeyes here. We make a deviled egg sauce, like an emulsion with all the flavors of a deviled egg. And then we make a paprika sauce that has a lot of onion and garlic in it, and a lot of paprika with some steak sauce, a little wine. And then we top it with a pepperoncini that's stewed with some onions and garlic. The one profession that I think of when I cook is actually like Broadway theater. They think of the play, and then they go through the preview process, and then after the reviews are in, if it's a hit or a miss, they still have to come in every day to do the same thing over and over again. And so it's just like that when you own a restaurant. You know, you think of it, you gather all this money and put it together, and then you're in previews for 2 months. And then after the 2 months, you get all the reviews, and then that's when the real work starts. I mean, that's the everyday. And so I often think of Broadway theater when I think about the cooking restaurant profession.
It's so tender and flavorful,
Yes.
and it really sort of melts in your mouth.
Yeah, and there's also such a plethora of flavors within it. It's just a little piece of heaven. Yeah.
The main cooking figure in my house was probably me. I love my mom, but I'd say that out of everyone, she probably cooked the most, but it was, I tried to cook so that she didn't have to, you know? The dessert course that I will be making tonight is a malva pudding cake, and it's something that we serve at the restaurant, and if we took the dessert off the menu, I think there might be a riot at the restaurant. It's a caramelized cake that's made with a little bit of our apricot jam, and it has a custard poured into it when it comes out of the oven. And then we're serving it with a blood orange sherbet. With baking, you really need to learn and know all the rules, like the science, in order to break the rules. The malva pudding cake is basically a dry cake that we bake till it's really dry inside, but then when we bring it out of the oven, we pour a hot custard into it. So the whole thing is just like really gooey and caramely, and the way that it cooks like volcanic lava, and so a lot of times it'll spill over, and it's just fun. It doesn't look that sexy, but it is absolutely delicious.
I love Jessica's desserts. Here's why. There's the heft of the cake, but then the cleansing brightness of the sherbet. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but think about at the end of a big meal, you want to cleanse your palate so you can make out with somebody with a band.
I think that there's a huge rise in quick service, which is providing food for a lot of people that come into the door every day at a reasonable price. Obviously, as the rent increases, as our labor laws change, it will change the game of quick service.
The problem is that processed food, like fast food, is cheaper than real food at this point because of the way the food system is set up in America.
This is the decade where we can really push through for the democracy of affordable good food.
We have to eat 3 times a day, and since we're eating so poorly as a nation, we're losing the innovators, we're losing the thinkers, we're losing to Finland and Norway and to Japan and France, all these places, Italy, where the kids eat really well.
If there's one thing we can do, you start thinking about eating based on a spiritual compass. Does not mean you have to be particularly religious, but that sort of helps the full space of this. What do we do with waste? How do we buy food? What time of the year do we buy it? How do we celebrate food? When do we fast? If you eat based on a spiritual compass, that would be massive, massive.